limitations of the medical profession. Today, no vaccine, no cure.
Only this.
Condom. It's cheap and it's effective. Yet there's more power to save lives in this simple sheath than anything that modern medicine's come up with.
Getting that message heard is no easy task. Condoms have long been frowned upon by this predominantly Buddhist population. In the home, they're more likely to be seen as evidence of extramarital sex instead of a sign of responsible behaviour. And tackling the sex trade has its own problems. Economic reality sees to that.
The young people who work the streets and brothels of Thailand are prisoners of poverty. How can a girl resist selling her body when she'll make as much in one day for her family as her father makes in an entire month?
That fact alone means this illegal trade will continue. For AIDS groups, it means going to unusual lengths.
This is exactly what you think it is, a huge condom. It's an exercise in social engineering, trying to get people to change the way that they behave. And the weapon that they're using is humour.
They call this a condom night. Fancy dress it may be, but there's nothing fancy about the warning. And here at least, it seems people are beginning to take notice. These days, they're a familiar sight in the bars of Bangkok. Armed with boxes of condoms and pamphlets, these young volunteers are venturing where others fear to tread, taking the AIDS awareness campaign to the front line. If you think this looks like good fun, well, you're not far wrong. But if you think there's nothing funny about condoms, think again. From key rings to novelties, T-shirts, even a restaurant. You might call this sort of humour risque. Here, it's helping change attitudes, helping reduce the risk of AIDS.
More and more people are using condoms, and the girls who work in the commercial sex places are beginning to be much more aware that if they don't use a condom, they're going to go home in a casket.
At first, only gays.
It's a message that's being heard all around the world with varying degrees of success. This Australian television campaign came in for severe criticism as being too shocking. But today, Australia has one of the lowest rates of new AIDS cases in the world.
Most people aren't aware that what the Grim Reaper campaign was designed to achieve, and it achieved its objective superbly, was to mobilise an awareness of AIDS. People before the Grim Reaper campaign did not think that AIDS was much of a problem. After the Grim Reaper campaign, there was no one in this country who underestimated the full scale of how serious AIDS was.
World health experts say that's not the way it is in the USA, a nation with one of the worst AIDS problems in the world. Oh, sure, they use societal engineering here to sell everything, from V8s to hamburgers, the clothes that you wear. But when it comes to saving lives from AIDS deaths, the critics argue the legislators are taking the moral high ground, with disastrous results.
Like unsafe sex, sex without condoms, dirty needles spread AIDS. Clean needles mean that addicts stay addicted, but the consequences of their habit, AIDS, hepatitis and septicemia, don't occur. Clean drugs may not be an acceptable alternative to the community, but clean drugs and clean needles limit the spread of disease. In New York, addicts hire a needle for the night in places they call shooting galleries, because to be caught on the streets with a syringe in your pocket could mean years in jail. Logic demands that authorities do everything to ensure that society works hard to change those things that can be changed and accept those that can't. Social engineering is the tool, and here it's being ignored.
The effect of it is that they are talking to the American people as though drugs is a moral issue, that whether you use drugs or not use drugs is really a question of morality. In Australia, on the other hand, we take the view that that primarily drugs is about avoiding consequences, or as we say, minimizing harm. And it may or may not be a moral issue, but above all else, it's a question of survival.
It's a question now confronting Thailand in every area of daily life, from television and radio ads to AIDS education kits. And it knows no boundaries when it comes to age. These youngsters may be too young to fully appreciate the serious side, but it's shaping attitudes that could help them avoid an AIDS explosion. The future of Asia's developing nations depends on it. In many ways, Thailand is a crucible of AIDS. If left unchecked, it's set to cut a swathe through poorer and neighbouring countries, and through foreigners to the heterosexual community in the West. The social cost will be staggering, and in terms of economics, it's a crisis Thailand, for one, can ill afford. A country with just 80,000 hospital beds, it must deal with 200 new AIDS cases every day. Drugs like AZT, the sole hope of sufferers in the West, will be way beyond the reach of most people here. In the face of slow progress of science, it's a crisis societies everywhere must deal with as best they can. Thailand's campaign will never stop AIDS, but it's working to change the way that people lead their lives. And with the prospect of millions of deaths by the end of the decade, it could be their only hope for the future. Next week, an innovation that could mean the end of the conventional clutch and automatic transmission.
Taking the legwork out of driving. That's next week on Beyond 2000.
Later in this edition, that fish finder.
See the fish just there?
And we'll return with the quest to unravel one of the greatest mysteries of science.
How our universe was formed.
The trouble with most toasted mueslis is they're heavy in fat. Kellogg's Just Right, however, has far less fat than toasted muesli, yet its wholesome blend of whole wheat flakes, rye, juicy sultanas, honey, oats and the goodness of bran gives you a truly satisfying taste without that sinking feeling. Not too heavy, not too light. It's just right. From Kellogg's.
Every night we stock the shelves. You know, home brand is a good brand.
Really?
Yes.
Our range is great.
This is really cheap.
You'll need home delivery.
We've got lots of lower prices for you.
It's on special.
Many ways to save.
We're the Woolworths fresh food people.
For fresh food people, we know a lot about groceries.
We're the Woolworths fresh food people. With so much more for you.
There is much more for everybody.
Bike helmets, because you'll be fined $39 if you don't wear one.
If you're a sports lover, you gotta have what it takes.
Adidas Ladies Torsion, $120. Pony Basketball Boot, Nike Ladies Aircraft, both $99.95. Adidas Detroit Black or White, Pony Junior Basketball Boot, both $59.95. Nike Ladies Cross Trainer Airspan Running Shoe and Ultra Force, $129.95. And assorted parachute track pants, juniors and seniors, all $39.95.
Sunday at 4:30, the Pioneers are on the prowl. The atmosphere will be electric as the Pioneers clash with the Kilsyth Cobras. Hosted by Jim Buckley and Bob Brown. Siebel action from the Ice House, 4:30 Sunday on Channel 8.
Look out past the edge of our own galaxy, the Milky Way, out to the large Magellanic Cloud, and at 69 degrees south of the celestial equator, there's a band of bright stars. One, particularly bright, at 100,000 times the luminosity of our own sun, was catalogued and named after its discoverer and position. Sander Luke was the astronomer, 69 degrees, so it became Sander Luke, 69, number 202. Now, this star showed up in the first photograph that astronomers took in the 19th century, so its characteristics were well known. But early on the morning of the 23rd of February 1987, all that changed.
In a most spectacular fashion, that star died. It was an event that actually occurred 170,000 years ago. But on that February morning, the evidence eventually reached the excited observers on Earth. A star that had been well studied was exploding before their eyes. Star Sanderluke 69, number 202, was dead